Hello and welcome to Grey Matters, the channel that promotes the fact that the older generation still matters and has relevance, and which looks at issues that matter to the older generation. And renewing your driving licence when you hit 70 is an issue that is becoming more and more important to the older generation, because there's been a lot of confusion recently about what's going to happen. Now, I had heard, probably as you had, that there were some new rules coming into force for drivers aged 70 and over for when they renew their licences, which, as you probably know, is every 3 years. Mine is due for renewal in January. Now, according to every source I checked, these new rules were coming into force last month. That's July 2025, for those of you watching this in the future. However, the current information on the DVLA website doesn't mention these new rules at all, and the application form is no different to usual. Therefore, I can only deduce that they aren't yet in force. Now, that said, if you've received a renewal notice and it's based on the new rules, please do let me know. Alright, now there have been loads and loads and loads of videos all over the internet about these changes, but most have been scaremongering and inaccurate. So I'm going to give you the facts as we know them, so that you can be prepared for the changes when they eventually arrive. I'm going to look at the data, and I'm going to challenge some of the reasoning behind the rules, and I'm going to make a suggestion that will, I'm sure, upset any young drivers watching, though I'm also sure there won't be any. Now, these proposed changes represent the most significant reform for drivers aged 70 and over that we've seen in decades. Until now, we've simply self-certificated our fitness to drive in order to renew the licence. However, the new rules are going to introduce mandatory medical assessments, as well as vision and potential cognitive screening. And on top of that, there will be risk-based checks administered by the DVLA. Wow, now that's an awful lot of hoops to jump through for sure. But let's just get rid of the nonsense first. The over 70s are not going to have to take a driving test in order to renew the licence. Now, that's been one of the most prevalent pieces of misinformation out there. Don't worry about that. So the real issue here, and it's something that a lot of older people don't want to admit, but the real issue is that there are many older people who are driving with undiagnosed medical conditions, such as dementia and heart failure. Now, self-diagnosis is obviously flawed and fails to pick up on conditions such as cognitive decline because the subject is generally unaware of it. According to Kang & Co solicitors, a survey last year of nearly 6 million UK drivers aged 70 plus found that many were continuing to drive in their 80s and 90s without any formal assessments. And it uncovered typical age-related health concerns such as impaired vision, slow reactions and early dementia. And these aren't always recognised without structured testing. So, as a result, the government has made these changes to enhance road safety while supporting the independence of qualified older drivers. I've got no reason to doubt that. Maybe you do. Let me know. But I'm sure you want to know really what would actually be required. Okay, so the renewal frequency will remain every 3 years, but now mandatory medical fitness assessments may be needed. Now, an acquaintance of mine commented to me that that was a contradiction. They reckoned if it's mandatory, it will be needed, not may be needed. So here's a little English lesson for him. Mandatory is not the same as compulsory. If it were compulsory, it would be required. Mandatory just means that the DVLA can mandate, in other words demand, that you have an assessment. Basically, they're just reserving the right to tell you to take one. So what this means is that you will need a signed medical form, a D4, or report signed by your GP confirming fitness. Vision and cognitive assessments might be required depending on the outcome of the basic assessment. Now, the DVLA will be able to issue limited licenses, such as daytime only driving, or require refresher driving courses in some cases. And that's the bit, I think, where people are saying, oh, you've got to have a driving test. No, you might be required to take a refresher driving course, or maybe a driving assessment. I wouldn't have a problem with that. But there would also be random DVLA screenings of individuals regardless of their health declarations. How's it going to work? Well, you'll receive a license reminder in approximately 90 days before your license expires. Again, there's no change there. If required, you'll need a medical appointment booked via your GP or an approved medical professional to assess your fitness to drive. It might be the GP who requires you to take the visual cognitive assessments. You never know. Having done your basic assessment, he may have concerns. You will then submit all the documents, including test results and reports, via the DVLA website or by post. Then the DVLA will review everything and issue your license or a conditional license, or maybe request additional information or testing. Of course, the issue I've got with that is that if you try to get an appointment at your doctor's for when you're ill, think how hard it's going to be to get an appointment just to get driving assessment. I mean, maybe the standard practice will be that the GP will quickly look through your medical history, pull up any red flags, but other than that say, no, you're fit to drive. Don't know really how that bit's going to work. But when you think there are over 9 million drivers over 70, 9 million over 70 in the UK, if they all, particularly maybe in the first year this comes out, all require medical assessments, well, just imagine what it's going to be like to get appointments for that, or even if you're ill, when they can't even cope with what they've got. With all the additional building that's going on, the population rises, the fact that the NHS England isn't allowing more doctor's surgeries to be built, and if they were, they apparently say that there's not enough doctors to fill them. With all that going on, I think the chances of this plan succeeding is full of issues. But just to reassure you, there won't be any automatic bans. If you fail the screening tests, the DVLA could revoke your licence or suspend it further pending tests. But the whole ethos of these new rules is to keep us mobile and independent for as long as possible. We actually had a family member in his 90s still driving and who was a total liability on the roads, yet there was no mechanism to get his licence revoked. To be fair, I will personally have no problem giving up my licence if the evidence shows I'll be a danger to others on the road. In fact, I'll probably contact my insurance company and offer to take a driving assessment or ask for one of those black boxes if I'm still driving when I'm 80. Why 80? Well, it's a well-known fact that the moment you turn from 79 to 80, you suddenly become a totally incompetent driver, at least in the eyes of the insurance companies, and your clean, accident-free driving history up to that point is irrelevant, as far as they're concerned anyway. But now, look, I want to challenge some of this. The emphasis is on older drivers, okay? But accidents, police don't call them that anymore, they call them collisions, don't they? But accidents involving young drivers are a far more serious issue. Younger drivers, particularly those under 25, tend to have a higher rate of accidents compared to older drivers, mostly due to inexperience and riskier driving behaviours such as overtaking and speeding. And often their skill fails and falls far short of what's required. Older drivers, particularly those over 70s, are involved in fewer accidents, but when they are, the consequences can sometimes be more severe. due to factors like slower reaction times. But when it comes to fatal accidents, younger drivers tend to have a higher rate there as well. Factors again include inexperience and also speeding. The exact numbers can vary by country and year, but in the UK, more than 1,500 drivers, young drivers, are killed or seriously injured on our roads every year. Young male drivers in particular are 4 times as likely to be killed or seriously injured on the roads compared to those aged 25 or over. On the other hand, as I mentioned, older drivers, those over 70, tend to have fewer accidents due to more cautious driving habits, but the accidents they do have can be more serious, and frailty being one of the big causes of those more serious injuries. And the risk of being involved in a fatal accident increases after 70, but it's still lower compared to younger drivers. But it's the older ones that seem to be getting penalised more. So my question is, if younger drivers have more accidents than the over 70s, if they are 4 times more likely to be killed or seriously injured than the over 70s, why isn't the government taking legislative steps to reduce those figures? Why aren't new young drivers compelled to have a black box fitted? Currently it's voluntary, with an inducement of lower insurance premiums. I also believe that every new young driver should have to display a P-plate for their first year on the road. And why not follow that up with another driving assessment? And if their driving is found to be below a certain benchmark standard, they should be subjected to similar sanctions as the over 70s are, such as limited driving licences until their driving is back to a standard that is acceptable. Actually, at that point we'll have an advantage over older drivers because there is room for improvement. Because in reality, it's not very likely that the seniors' drivings will improve that much. It doesn't matter really how sprightly you are, your reaction times will inevitably continue to degrade as you get older. So what do you think about all this? And do we oldens need closer monitoring to ensure that we are road safe? Or is it another example of the government trying to control everything we do? As always, do let me know in the comments. We do try to read them all. And I had a great comment last week from a disgruntled regular commenter, Beam Me Up 8458. Hello mate. Whose comments remind me of Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. He said, I'm 77. When will I be part of your older generation? You can stick your label where the sun don't shine. Well, okay. I mean, we do need labels, don't we? How else would you know not to drink bleach? Or that the parcel is addressed to you? Okay, I'm being flippant, but the burning question is, how do you differentiate between generations without a label? We've got the younger generation, we've got the older generation as generalities, but you know, since 1900 there have been 7 generations. The greatest, the silent, the baby boomers, Generation X, the millennials, Generation Z or Z, and Generation Alpha. And if you don't know the names of those generations, you'd have to know the dates, because you know, if you want to refer to one of them, you've got to call them something. So I think, beam me up, the only thing I'll be sticking up there is going to be my hemorrhoid cream. But thanks for the suggestion. That's it for now. Please do like, subscribe and share the video. The more the merrier. We're still trying to get to that magic 40,000 mark. But until the next time on Grey Matters, thanks for joining us, and it's bye for now.